of BA Honours Hindi in the
advance our national interests significantly in critical spheres. Sadly, the opposition repeatedly disrupted my statement in both houses of parliament. Obviously, for them, partisan politics was more important than national progress. Since I believe it is important that these matters are discussed in the public domain, I am presenting the thrust of my statement yesterday. In the last few months, we have witnessed several high-level diplomatic engagements involving the Honorable President, the Honorable Vice President, and the Honorable Prime Minister with foreign counterparts in India and abroad. We, the ministers of the Foreign Ministry, also visited a number of nations and received many of our foreign colleagues here in India. Through these efforts at multiple levels, we were able to advance our national objectives and interests in a volatile and uncertain world. Honorable President hosted the King of Cambodia from May 29 to 31st on his first state visit. This marked the celebrations of the 70th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between our countries. Honorable President was also the chief guest of the celebrations commemorating 150 years of arrival of Indians in Suriname in June. She was conferred Suriname's highest distinction, the Grand Order of the Chain of the Yellow Star. This is surely a matter of great pride for all Indians. Honorable President also visited Serbia, a time-tested friend of India. Honorable Vice President represented our country at the coronation ceremony of King Charles III in London in May. He interacted with the presidents of Germany, Israel, and Brazil, amongst others. He also met with Indian students and members of the diaspora. In India, Honorable Vice President engaged his counterparts from Zimbabwe and Gambia and received the Deputy Prime Minister of the Democratic Republic of Congo. This was reflective of our deeper engagement with Africa. In the last few months, the Prime Minister made some particularly important visits that were directly relevant to our national security and development. These included the United States, France, UAE, Australia, and Egypt. Prime Minister participated in the Quad and G7 meetings in Japan and co-chaired the third FIPEX Summit in Papua New Guinea. He also hosted the Prime Minister of Nepal and the President of Sri Lanka in New Delhi. The official state visit to the United States of Shri Narendra Modi ji from June 20 to 23, 2023 was only the second by an Indian Prime Minister. He was accorded the rare privilege of addressing the joint session of the US Congress for a second time. In Washington, D.C., Prime Minister was given a formal state welcome at the White House. As a special gesture, the US government invited nearly 8,000 members of the Indian diaspora to witness the ceremony. Prime Minister held bilateral talks with the US President on June 22nd. President Biden hosted both a state dinner as well as a private dinner at the White House. The Prime Minister interacted with several CEOs of tech companies individually, as also in a roundtable that was co-chaired with President Biden. He invited them to strengthen the presence and operations in India. Prime Minister addressed young entrepreneurs and participated in a skill and innovation meeting along with the First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden. The key outcomes of his visit were: 1. Agreement to augment technology cooperation, especially through the Initiative for Critical and Emerging Technologies, ICET, focusing on artificial intelligence, semiconductors, space, quantum, and telecom. India became a member in the Mineral Security Partnership as well. 2. Our Make in India in the defense sector got a big boost with an agreement between GE Aerospace and Hindustan Aeronautics Limited to manufacture the GE 414 jet engine in India for the light combat aircraft. India has been pursuing this for decades and this breakthrough marks a significant jump in our technology cooperation. It was also agreed that American naval ships will use our shipyards for their repair and maintenance. 3. ISRO and NASA signed the Artemis Accords for exploration of outer space for peaceful purposes. They would cooperate in human space flights and launch a joint effort to the International Space Station in 2024. 4. The two countries resolved 6 outstanding bilateral trade disputes in the WTO through mutually agreed solutions. This is an exceptional step in the trade domain. 5. Our semiconductor mission made significant progress through commitments by 3 major US companies for building a semiconductor assembly and test facility and for training Indian engineers and workforce. 6. In the telecommunications sector, both sides agreed to collaborate towards a bilateral trusted network, trusted sources framework. Indian companies will participate in the US RIP and Replace program and undertake ORAN reciprocal pilot projects. 7. To address the public concerns about visas, the US announced its decision to open 2 new consulates in Bengaluru and Ahmedabad. It will also explore ways of making visa renewal more user-friendly. India will take steps to operationalize its consulate in Seattle soon. 8. 105 cultural antiquities that were illegally trafficked to the United States will be returned, and this has since happened after the Prime Minister's visit. 9. Both countries agreed to commence an Indian Ocean dialogue, and USA announced that it would participate in the Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative that was initiated by India in 2019. And 10. India and the United States will work together for the development of digital public infrastructure and strengthen multilateral development banks to address global challenges. During his US visit, Prime Minister led the 9th International Day of Yoga on 21 June at the UN headquarters in New York, which involved 135 nationalities. This sets a Guinness World Record. Earlier, Prime Minister had participated in the G7 Summit and the Quad leaders meeting in Hiroshima on 20th May. At the Quad meeting, the leaders released a vision statement and announced a new clean energy supply chains initiative, a Quad infrastructure fellowships program, and a new Quad partnership for cable connectivity and resilience. They also released a Quad statement on critical and emerging technology standards and launched an investors network. The Prime Minister has invited Quad leaders to India for the next summit in 2024. At the G7 summit, Prime Minister held interactions with 14 counterparts and the UN Secretary General. They included the presidents of Indonesia, South Korea, France, Ukraine, and Brazil, the presidents of the EU Commission and the EU Council, Prime Ministers of Japan, Vietnam, UK, Cook Islands, and the Chancellor of Germany. Thereafter, he made a landmark visit to Australia. Signing a migration and mobility partnership arrangement was one of the highlights of the visit, signifying our commitment to support students and help them explore the global workplace. During his stay, Prime Minister interacted with his counterpart and prominent personalities, participated in a business roundtable, and addressed the Indian community in Sydney. Many of you would recall the community event in particular and the warm words that Prime Minister Albanese had for our Prime Minister. He also announced our intention to establish a new consulate in Brisbane. France has been a long-standing and reliable strategic partner of India. Therefore, the invitation to our Prime Minister to be the guest of honor at the Bastille Day Parade on 14 July was particularly noteworthy. His presence there also saw a march past by a Tri-Services Indian Armed Forces contingent, as well as soldiers of the Punjab Regiment, which had a history in France. In a rare honor, Prime Minister was conferred with the Grand Cross of the Legion of Honor, France's highest civilian award. He held meetings with President Macron and other important dignitaries and interacted with a cross-section of French society. He also announced the setting up of an Indian consulate in Marseille. India and France released a vision document entitled Horizon 2047 to look ahead on the 25th anniversary of our strategic partnership. On his way back, Prime Minister visited the United Arab Emirates on July 15th. In Abu Dhabi, he held talks with the President of the UAE. The visit resulted in concluding agreements on trade settlements in national currency and interlinking of payments of central banks. An MOU was signed for the establishment of an IIT Delhi campus in Abu Dhabi. The month before, Honorable PM paid a state visit to Egypt on 24-25 June. It was the first bilateral visit by an Indian Prime Minister to Egypt for 26 years. His discussions led to the elevation of India-Egypt ties to a strategic partnership. Apart from agreements concluded in different areas, direct flights in the Delhi-Cairo sector were announced. In a special ceremony, Prime Minister was conferred with the Order of the Nile, which is the highest state honor of Egypt. Another notable development in this period was India's co-hosting of the third summit of the Forum for India-Pacific Islands Cooperation, FIPIC, jointly with Papua New Guinea on 22nd May at Port Moresby. Prime Minister was received with exceptional respect and courtesy by Pacific leaders. We will all recall the extraordinary gesture on his arrival by Prime Minister James Marape of Papua New Guinea. He was conferred with the Grand Companion of the Order of Lahugu by the Governor General of PNG, the Companion of the Order of Fiji by the Prime Minister of Fiji, the highest civilian awards of the two nations. He was also presented with Abakal, a symbol of leadership and wisdom, by the President of Palau. India is understandably perceived today as a trusted development partner by the Pacific Island countries. Many recalled how we stood by them during the COVID. We are now taking forward our cooperation by launching a Sustainable Coastal and Ocean Research Institute, SCORI, housed in Fiji, a warehouse which hosts geospatial data relating to Pacific nations in Papua New Guinea. In addition, we will build a 100-bed regional hospital in Fiji and supply sea ambulances and dialysis units, as well as collaborate on Jan Aushadhi Kendra in the region. During this time, India also virtually hosted the summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO. This adopted the New Delhi Declaration and two joint statements on countering radicalization and cooperation in digital transformation. As part of Neighborhood First policy, engagements with immediate neighbors have been prioritized over the last decade. Two prominent visits that should be noted are those of the Prime Minister of Nepal and the President of Sri Lanka. The Prime Ministers of Nepal and India, after their talks, participated in virtual groundbreaking ceremonies of 6 projects, including those of integrated checkposts, railway lines, petroleum pipeline facilities, and transmission lines. The leaders virtually witnessed the handing over of the Kurta-Bijalpura section of the railway line. Understandings reached between them included that on electricity imports from Nepal, as well as allowing exports of Nepal's electricity to Bangladesh using the Indian grid. India also committed to expand cross-border petroleum pipeline infrastructure. The President of Sri Lanka paid an official visit to India on 21st July, his first in his capacity as President. Prime Minister and the President had productive discussions and agreed on a vision document to promote connectivity and catalyze prosperity. This covered multiple facets, including maritime, air, energy, and power, trade, and economic and financial, as well as people-to-people connectivity. Agreements were concluded on development projects in Trincomalee district, on animal husbandry and dairying, on renewable energy and on UPI interface. Prime Minister discussed issues related to the Tamil community in Sri Lanka and reiterated the need to fulfill their aspirations. He underlined the importance of implementing the 13th Amendment and conducting provincial council elections. Prime Minister also took up the issue of Indian fishermen and requested the Sri Lankan side to approach it on a humanitarian basis. The ongoing G20 presidency has witnessed our focusing attention on the most pressing challenges faced by humanity, especially developing countries. This included Mission Life for empowering climate-friendly lifestyles and popularization of millets to address the challenge of food security. Meetings have been held across the country in multiple cities and states. And as envisaged by Prime Minister, we are realizing our intent to make India's G20 presidency a truly national endeavor and showcase India to the world. Insofar as the ministers of MEA are concerned, we have traveled extensively to Africa, to Latin America, Southeast Asia, the Gulf and Europe in pursuance of our global objectives. It is essential that key gatherings and conferences in the world hear the Indian viewpoint, and we ensure that it did so.
EAM